G'day folks, Dr. Andy from Section 2 at Fraser's GAMSAT, and today we're talking about Section 1 and how we can approach different kinds of text and how different kinds of text change the way we talk about certain kinds of questions and answers. So first up, we've got a literary text, one of the kind of all-time great writers of all time, Mr. Charles Dickens, the 19th century author. And we've got a couple of passages, very short passages, from his novel Hard Times. So looking at this first passage, you notice that it's kind of taken, we've got no real context. We only know that we're talking about a place called Coketown, and it's kind of ugly. It's kind of like an industrial, sort of working place in the 19th century. Shouldering and trampling. We've got the people who live in Coketown, who are kind of pejoratively called the hands. We've got kind of lots going on. So if we look at this first question, the imagery Dickens paints of Coketown can best be described as... Let's look at our answers. So it's asking us for a description of the imagery and the best description available. These questions can be very annoying because sometimes you'll have two that are like really good, and then you have to kind of rationalize your way through two good answers to find the best one. So the first thing that I've got to really sort of pin down and really drive home is that you must read all four answers to the question, because sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, A is great, and then you just circle A, and then you realize that D is actually best. It's annoying, and it's a part of the design of the thing. So let's look at the imagery can best be described as A, unnatural and favourless. Unnatural is good. Favourless is a strange word, without favour, which is true, but it's also a strange word, so I'm suspicious of favourless. B, cold and dreary. We've got no real evidence that it's cold. It's referring to the temperature, not some kind of metaphor about it's cold-hearted or this kind of thing. Dreary, yes, but not cold. So I'm going to eliminate B. C, oblique and aggressive. Now, oblique is a kind of anachronistic word there. So is anachronistic when you think about it. It's a strange word. It's a strange word to use. Now, oblique kind of means like off the side, so we have this oblique and aggressive. I don't think that is a particularly best way of describing the imagery there. That brings us down to D, mechanical and uninhabitable. So between A and D, we've got two good ones. It is certainly mechanical. We've got all this bricking, we've got smokestacks, we've got this kind of, chimneys for want of air. So it's very mechanical, industrial, all those connotations. And uninhabitable, like you wouldn't want to live there. In fact, the people that live there aren't referred to as people, they're referred to as hands, and by the end, hands and stomachs. So, knowing that favourless is a weird word, I'm going to go with D, and D is the correct answer. So you see step by step how I managed to eliminate answers, get down to a 50-50 where I have two pretty good answers, and then knock out the 25 of the 50, giving us the correct answer. All right, let's move on to the second question. In line 10, the hands refers to which part of society and in what manner? So we have a noun and we have an adverb describing how Dickens is describing these people. So here we go. Among the multitude of Coketown, generically called the hands, a race who would have found mere favour with some people if Providence hadn't seen fit to make them only hands, or, like the lower 10 creatures of the seashore, only hands and stomachs. So you can see that these hands are kind of disembodied. They're not given they're not given agency as human beings. So A, working class and bluntly. So does Dickens describe the working class in a blunt way? Well, we know that it's a very kind of working class industrial town, so they probably are working class. And bluntly, is it blunt? I would say it's kind of diversionary. It moves through kind of a lot of description, a lot of hyperbole. So I think bluntly is a problem. So let's put a dot there, sort of knocking out A. B, middle class and depreciatingly. Now, it is kind of depreciative of them, but that's also a strange word. And B, they're not really middle class. We don't really have this kind of middle class sentiment of people living in, sort of suburbs or kind of general medium affluence. So let's get rid of B. C, proletariat and disparagingly. Now, proletariat is an anachronistic word. He said anachronistically. And disparagingly, well, it is disparagingly. They're not given sort of the status of human beings. So we have a race. Yep. If Providence seemed fit to make them only hands, like the lower 10 creatures of the seashore, only hands and stomachs. So it is disparaging. Now, some students who sit section 1 will know what the word proletariat means. Some don't. This is a hard case, okay? So we know that the second part of the answer is good. Some of us will know what the first part is, some of us won't. So let's talk about that when you get confronted with a word that you just simply don't know the meaning of. Let's move on quickly to the final answer, lower class and denigratingly. Denigratingly. So do they denigrate and are they lower class? Yes. So let's get rid of A because it's not blunt, it's very hyperbolic and effusive in the language, leaving us with 2 answers, okay? So D is good. But if you notice, we don't really know much about how, we don't know for sure that they are lower class. So proletariat means working class. So it's because that we don't know how rich or how not rich they are, we can't go with lower class. We can only go with C. So when you are down to this last question, this last answer, and you're really tossing up between, should I go with the one that I don't know that looks pretty good, or should I go with the one that I can't fully account for? That's a tough question. That is actually the million-dollar question. But C is the correct answer because we don't know for sure that they are lower class. We know that they work, which is sort of a part of being a proletariat, or being a part of the proletariat, part of being proletarian. So C is the correct answer. All right, let's go on to the next question. The grammatical structure of this excerpt was used by Dickens. So we have to finish the sentence with the best answer. So we're talking about how does Dickens use grammar in order to make meaning? So one really good way of approaching this kind of question first and foremost is how does it make you feel as a reader? That you are a human being, you are reading it. How does it make you feel? Well, we notice that we've got lots of semicolons and colons. Yep. We've got very long sentences, almost as if the sentences themselves were kind of mimicking the kind of labyrinthy, kind of like a maze-like structure of Coketown itself. We've got very few sentences, in fact. In fact, I think we've only got one. The whole paragraph is a single sentence. So, what effect does that have? So we have A, to cause the reader to finish the passage quickly. No, that's not a grammatical that's not a purpose of a grammatical structure. That's just really depends on the reader themselves. We got B, to indicate that all points are closely related. No, that's also not the purpose. we're looking for an affect. Like, what effect does this grammatical structure have on the reader? It's kind of, it's talking about art, really. C, to elicit a hurried speech rhythm that mirrors the industrial atmosphere. There you go. That looks way better. So we've got an effect of the grammatical structure in terms of kind of the poetry of the piece, rather than just these two ones, which are kind of describing literal things to do with the reader, not the piece itself. So we have D, to create the rhythm in the passage that helps it read with easy flow. Same deal. Leaving us with C. It's the only one that talks about the poetic effect of the text itself. Alright, so let's look at the second passage of Charles Dickens' Hard Times. Now we've got a very short passage, it's only 3 lines long, but it's a character talking. Okay, so we've got this character talking about teaching, one would assume, the Coketown young people. And so the question is, the final 2 sentences are an example of which literary device employed in what way. So we have 2 parts answers. We have the literary device and the effect, or not the effect so much as in the kind of tone in which it is delivered by the character. So if we look here, we've got, it is an analogy, yeah, the last 2 lines. You can only form the mind of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will be of any service to them, okay? So is it an analogy? Is the character comparing 2 things, or using one thing to compare it to another? And I don't think it is. There's no comparison, unless you can kind of read that we have this reasoning animal sort of thing as an analogy to the students themselves, but it's not explicitly done that way. So we can get rid of A, yeah? We've got B, a metaphor, and ironically. So this is a pretty, like loaded kind of question, but what is a metaphor? And when questions ask us, is this a metaphor or is this not a metaphor? We need a kind of definition of a metaphor that is simple and easy to use. I like to use the idea of a metaphor being when something known is used to describe something unknown. And in that case, we do have a metaphor because we have this idea of the reasoning animal representing the students or young people in general. So we have something known, the reasoning animal, and the unknown, which is the students it's representing. So it is a metaphor. So we can get rid of D instantly, yeah? So we have ironically or sarcastically. That's what we've got to work out. So is the character, who is a local businessman, is the character being ironic or sarcastic? Sorry, I apologize. Is Dickens being ironic or is he being sarcastic? Now, I reckon that if we're talking about sarcasm and Dickens being sarcastic, I don't think that is correct, because when we think about irony, we're thinking actually about the presence of hidden meaning. How does Dickens want us to think of this local businessman? Are we meant to think of him in a good light or a bad light? And I think it's a bad light in this case, because he wants nothing but facts. We have a lot of, sort of, what are these facts? Is this man sort of, like a wise teacher or a wise man? I don't think he is. So is Dickens being sarcastic, or is he making us think about that character in a negative way? That's the meaning of irony. When we have the presence of hidden meaning, something that goes unsaid that we read as an audience, and B is the correct answer. That's a tough question. We have a lot going on, but you can do it by knocking out bit by bit. First analogy, and then really breaking it down to that 50-50 and working it out that way. All right, see you later.